People often think that action, immediate, loud, visible action is the only path to progress. That if you're not constantly asserting yourself, constantly moving, you're somehow falling behind. But that's not true. In fact, it's often in silence, in stillness, where the most profound transformations occur. And it's a difficult thing to understand, let alone accept, because real silence requires discipline. It requires restraint. It demands that you trust something deeper than the noise of the world. And that's terrifying. But here's the thing. When you learn to stay silent, not out of fear or indifference, but out of wisdom and patience, that's when life starts to align itself in ways you couldn't possibly force. Everything that matters, clarity, strength, opportunity, it doesn't arrive on demand. It emerges, it unfolds. And if you're too busy trying to shout your way through life, you might just miss it. So today I want to talk about that silence, about what it means to step back, to wait, and to allow what's meant for you to find you, not because you're passive, but because you're prepared. Silence cultivates clarity. Noise distracts. Stillness reveals. This is not merely a poetic notion. It's a deep psychological truth grounded in both ancient wisdom and modern understanding of how the mind functions. In our world, we're bombarded by stimuli at every turn: notifications, conversations, demands, entertainment, expectations. This noise, constant, loud, and relentless, hijacks our attention and scatters our focus. It creates a sense of urgency and compulsion. We're always reacting, rarely reflecting. And in that reactive state, true clarity is nearly impossible to achieve. The mind, in its natural state, is not meant to be on high alert all the time. It's not designed to be perpetually entertained, constantly occupied, or pulled in a dozen directions at once. Yet that's how many of us live, chronically overstimulated, habitually distracted, and then we wonder why we feel lost, confused, unsure of what we want or where we're going. It's because the noise of the world drowns out the signal of the soul. And when you can't hear yourself think, how can you expect to know what you truly need? Silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the absence of internal chaos. It's the moment when the fog clears and you can actually see your own thoughts, your own motivations without distortion. But here's the problem. Silence is uncomfortable. When you remove the distractions, when you finally stop running, you're left alone with yourself. No filters, no noise to blame, just you. And for many people, that's because in silence, you begin to confront what you've been avoiding. The unresolved pain, the fears, the doubts, the contradictions. But that's exactly where clarity begins. When the external distractions fall away, your internal world becomes audible. Patterns emerge. Emotional wounds make themselves known. And from that awareness, from that honest confrontation, you gain insight. You begin to understand not just what you want, but why you want it. You start to distinguish between the noise of other people's expectations and the quiet truth of your own value. This process is not instant. It takes time, and it requires trust. Trust in the process and trust in yourself. Silence isn't productive in the traditional measurable sense. It doesn't give you immediate results, but it gives you something far more valuable: perspective. And with perspective comes power, the power to choose your path with intention instead of compulsion. The power to say no to what doesn't align and yes to what does without needing external validation to justify it. Consider how many times you've made decisions under pressure, in haste, in the noise of urgency. How often did those choices lead to regret? When you're in the noise, you tend to confuse movement with progress, reaction with direction. But movement without clarity is just busyness. It's spinning your wheels. And that's exactly what silence helps you avoid. By stepping back, by allowing stillness, you're not losing time, you're refining your aim. Think about nature. The most powerful forces often move in silence. Seeds germinate in silence. Mountains erode silently over centuries. The universe itself expands in silence. There's a wisdom in that. Silence doesn't mean absence of growth. It means depth. It means things are happening beneath the surface, things that are real, things that matter. Now, culturally, we're conditioned to fear that silence. We're taught that if we're not talking, posting, doing, we're falling behind. But true leaders, true thinkers, true creators, they all understand the value of retreat. The artist steps back from the canvas. The writer pauses before the next sentence. The strategist waits before making a move. In all these cases, silence precedes clarity, and clarity precedes effectiveness. Even in relationships, silence plays a crucial role. In silence, you listen, not just to the other person, but to your own response. You become aware of your reactivity, your triggers, your instincts. You begin to see how often people talk not to communicate, but to defend, to project, to fill a void. And when you stop engaging in that automatic noise, you create space for something real. Authenticity, understanding, connection that is enforced but earned. There's also a spiritual element to silence. Across religions and philosophies, from Buddhism to Christianity to Stoicism, silence is revered as a gateway to transcendence. The monks who take vows of silence aren't doing it out of superstition, they're doing it to cultivate awareness, to hear something deeper than surface level desire, to align with something higher than the ego. And while you don't have to become a monk to access that space, you do have to be willing to be still. The irony is that most people are desperately seeking clarity while simultaneously avoiding the one thing that allows it to emerge. They want answers, but they're unwilling to stop talking long enough to hear them. They want peace, but they won't disconnect from the very noise that destroys it. And so they remain stuck, not because clarity is unavailable, but because they're too busy to notice it's been trying to reach them all along. You begin to understand that silence is not empty. It's full of information, of intuition, of insight that you can't access any other way. It doesn't come from outside you. It rises up from within when you finally quiet the noise around you. That stillness. It's where your real self lives, not the performance, not the mask, not the conditioned persona, but you. The you that knows. The you that remembers. The you that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. And once you've experienced that kind of silence, it changes you, not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but in a slow, almost imperceptible way. You become less reactive, more thoughtful, less dependent on external noise to validate your internal worth. You begin to trust your gut, not because it's loud, but because it's clear. And clarity, when it's real, doesn't scream. It whispers. It's quiet, but it's undeniable. You start to approach decisions differently. You wait, you observe, you ask deeper questions, not just what should I do, but what is right, what aligns, what matters. You realize that silence is not a void, it's a vessel. And the more you sit in it, the more it fills with exactly what you need to move forward. Not blindly, not anxiously. You realize the world will always be loud. The noise won't stop, but you can change your relationship to it. You don't have to be ruled by it. You don't have to let it drag you away from yourself. Because once you've tasted silence, real silence, you understand that it's not the world outside that needs to quiet down. It's you who needs to find stillness within the noise. That's where the clarity is. It always was. Patience is not an action, it's strategic restraint. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of growth and success in the modern world. To hold your energy back, to resist the urge to react immediately, to trust the process when nothing visible is happening, that takes strength. It takes maturity. It takes a level of internal control that doesn't get much praise in a world addicted to immediate results. That the people who master this, who learn to restrain their impulses until the timing is right, these are the people who move with impact. Think of a lion stalking its prey. It doesn't charge at the first sight of movement. It waits, it watches, it calculates. Every muscle is coiled, ready, but still. That's not an action, that's precision. That's patience with purpose. That's strategy. In life, you don't want to be the person who jumps at every opportunity without discernment. You want to be the one who understands that not every opportunity is worth chasing. That sometimes letting things unfold naturally allows you to step into the right opportunity, the one that fits not just your ambition, but your values and your vision. There's also a psychological resilience that comes with this kind of patience. When you're always acting from urgency, you're operating from scarcity. You're saying, if I don't do this now, it'll be gone. If I don't act immediately, I'll miss my chance. That mindset creates anxiety, tension, panic. But strategic restraint is built on abundance. It's the belief that the right things will come, and when they do, you'll be ready. That you don't need to grasp at everything just to feel secure. That you can let go of chasing and start choosing. To be able to choose, you have to wait. And waiting, when done with purpose, is a power move. It allows you to gather information, observe patterns, understand dynamics. It lets you watch how things evolve without inserting yourself too early. It lets others reveal their intentions while you hold your ground. That kind of patience gives you leverage, because when you finally move, you do so with full awareness. You're not reacting, you're executing. This idea also applies deeply in relationships. Strategic restraint in communication, knowing when to speak and when to listen, when to push and when to let be, is essential for connection. If you always respond instantly, emotionally, you leave no space for reflection. But if you can wait, if you can let the other person finish, if you can take a breath before replying, you bring wisdom into the exchange. You avoid saying things you'll regret. You make room for real understanding. That's not passivity. That's patience as emotional intelligence. Strategic restraint is about trusting that timing has intelligence, that there's a rhythm to life that you can align with if you're attuned enough. Sometimes the doors aren't opening because you're not ready to walk through them. Sometimes the pause isn't punishment, it's preparation. You're being shaped, tested, refined. You're being taught patience so that when the moment comes, you won't fumble it. You'll be steady, grounded, composed. There's also a spiritual aspect to this kind of patience. It requires surrender, not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of giving over, of accepting that not everything is in your control, and that trying to force things only creates resistance. Strategic restraint involves releasing your grip, loosening your need to manipulate outcomes, and instead aligning your actions with the deeper flow. It's saying, I'll act when it's time. I'll move when the path is clear. That surrender is where real strength lives, because it means you're no longer acting from fear. You begin to notice that the people who make the biggest impact are rarely the loudest or the fastest. They are the ones who move with intention. They're selective about where they place their energy. They know their value, so they don't need to prove it constantly. They're not performing for approval. They're preparing in silence. And when they speak, people listen. When they act, things shift, because their movement has weight. It has meaning. It has timing. This restraint also builds confidence. When you're not constantly acting out of compulsion, you begin to trust yourself more. You realize that you don't need to be everywhere, do everything, respond to everyone. You can wait. You can observe. You can make deliberate choices. And those choices come from strength, not insecurity. They're grounded in awareness, not impulse. Patience as strategic restraint is especially powerful when it comes to conflict. In moments of tension, the first reaction is rarely the best one. But if you can pause, if you can hold your response, you give yourself time to choose clarity over chaos. You diffuse the situation by refusing to escalate it. You reclaim control by not giving it away to someone else's emotion. That kind of patience can change the entire energy of a conversation. It can shift the trajectory of a relationship. It can stop a cycle before it repeats. Even in ambition, in chasing your dreams, building your vision, restraint matters. There's a temptation to push, to grind, to force results. But some things can't be rushed. If you try to scale too fast, you risk collapse. If you try to rise before you've built your foundation, the fall will be inevitable. Strategic patience is knowing when to push and when to pause, when to go hard and when to hold back. It's playing the long game, even when the short game looks tempting. Ultimately, strategic restraint is an internal posture. It's about being in control of your impulses, not controlled by them. It's about knowing that doing nothing can be as powerful as doing something if it's done with awareness, with timing, with purpose. It's about recognizing that not all silence is empty and not all waiting is wasted. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait. Not because you're unsure, but because you're preparing to act with precision. What's meant for you often arrives when you stop chasing and start aligning. The statement touches something deep within the human experience, a recognition that relentless pursuit doesn't always yield fulfillment, and that sometimes the more you chase something, the further it seems to drift away. It challenges the conventional mindset that says if you want something badly enough, you must pursue it endlessly, even obsessively. While effort is essential, alignment is what gives that effort direction. Without alignment, you're just moving, but not necessarily moving toward what's truly yours. Pacing often comes from a place of scarcity. It carries the undertone of fear. Fear that if you don't act now, if you don't claim it before someone else does, it will disappear. It's rooted in the idea that life is a competition, that everything is limited, and that your worth is proven through conquest. But this mindset places you in a constant state of tension. It disconnects you from your internal compass, pulling your attention outward.